Hey everyone, it's great to see you. Today, we're going to talk about Star Wars Jedi Survivor, developed by Respawn Entertainment and published by Electronic Arts. Um, I like Respawn Entertainment quite a bit. They made Jedi Fallen Order, of course, and they also made Titanfall 2, a game that later in its life has been titled underrated gem, a classic, a FPS game that really redefines FPS in some forms. Um, and I played that and I really enjoyed it, and I recommend that you check it out too. It's super cheap to pick up if you haven't played it, and so it is worth a try. And also Fallen Order. Jedi Survivor is part of a trilogy of games in this third-person action-adventure style that Respawn Entertainment's been working on. And again, thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a few years now since I've played through it. But nonetheless, I was, as a result, excited to check out Jedi Survivor. And it recently came out earlier this year, and I finally beat it and got the platinum. And so I wanted to talk about it, tell you about my experience and whether it lived up to expectations and what the game was like, ultimately. And another very cool person was involved with this game too, the game director Stig Asmussen. So he has worked on the God of War series and Mortal Kombat, and it was very cool for him to bring his influence to this game and kind of take it on as game director. And so there was a couple of parties and folks involved that made me excited to check out the game. And so when it released, it was received pretty favorably, and it was one of the most downloaded games in North America around the time of its release. And so that was an impressive milestone for the game and for Respawn as well, I'm sure. But overall, what is Jedi Survivor even about? That's what we're here to talk about. So this trilogy of games, and this being the second in the trilogy, follows this guy, Cal Kestis, on the front. And Cal is a pretty young Jedi. He survived Order 66 and was kind of left in this world of rediscovering the Jedi, rediscovering himself, and ultimately fighting the Empire in that process. And so in the second game here, we pick up a few years after the first, and Cal is kind of just habitually, one by one, completing operations with a group of mercenaries to take on the Empire. And in this latest one, when on Coruscant, attempting to retrieve some military plans from a senator, the plan goes awry a little bit. Cal's ship is left damaged on escape, and so he goes to a system with this planet Kobo, where an old friend Grease lives from the first game. And Grease used to be the owner of the ship and know the ship quite well, and can likely help Cal repair it. And so Cal goes there, he does some exploring around on the planet, and he meets a robot from a very early Jedi era who had a mission to activate a piece of machinery deep on the planet. And Cal ventures out there in the hopes of helping the robot, figuring out, oh, hey, what's going on? Maybe this is something kind of Jedi related that I can dip my toes in. And he does, and it turns out that I won't spoil too much, but it turns out that what Cal does there sets in motion a series of problems and the discovery of a planet in which the Empire has no means of getting to. And so this is very exciting news for anybody wanting to, as a Jedi, hide from the Empire and rebuild the Jedi Order. And so that's kind of the A's and B's of the story. And to kind of talk about the story itself, I did enjoy the story. What I enjoyed most about it was just the writing and the character development around Cal. He goes through a lot of experiences in this game, and you can tell really matures from Fallen Order to Jedi Survivor in ways that make his character very intriguing and interesting to see what's going to happen next. And while it is a bit tropey, Cal faces all of the standard things you see in any Jedi story in the Star Wars world, I did find it enjoyable. And so I think just that his character alone really makes this game engaging. When you look at the story at large, I wasn't nearly as impressed. And I think a big part of it was that the story seems very happenstance. Like, if the ship was never, if Cal was never on this mission and the ship never got damaged and he never randomly, fell down through a hole in the ground beneath a closet in the back of the saloon where Grease works, I mean, then Cal would have probably never discovered the series of events that kind of unfold throughout this game. And so I was really thinking to myself, wow, this is totally random. I almost think it would have been more effective if they had just opened Fallen Order with some of these plot points already established. Like, oh, we already know where the planet is, and this is something I've been looking for. And while that might sound convenient as well, I think what kind of leads Cal to the point he's at this point in the story, when things start to take off, were very coincidental. And beyond that, the things that do happen in that story, I don't feel like are particularly engaging from the lens of like, oh, this is interesting, and I'm really invested in what's going to happen next. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of great points throughout this story itself, but these are just reactions that I had when playing through it, and at sometimes the cutscenes and the dialogue were just kind of losing me. Like, I was listening and I was looking at what was happening on the screen, but then afterwards I couldn't go back and re-summarize the plot points that were interesting because of the fact that I just didn't find it particularly interesting. But again, to emphasize, what was exciting about this was in all the ways that Cal is developing as a character and kind of reacting to the things going on around him. He has this dabble with the dark side. You really start to see a more frustrated and emotional Cal. And, coming from the first game where I felt like he was very much a Disney-written, optimistic guy with a lot of challenges ahead of him, but finding out the best way to solve them, and having his little BD1 next to him to keep him chipper and uppity. At least that was how I felt about the first game, and kind of his interaction with, I'm fighting the dark side and I'm a good guy. It's interesting to see a Cal who's a little more loose, and it's something that I think every Jedi kind of, again, goes through throughout the universe of Star Wars and the franchise IP as a whole. So that's the story. Decent enough, but mostly engaging if you really invest in the characters along the way. And not only Cal, but many of the other characters are well written and interesting. And some of the characters from the first game have some conclusions here, which I was also quite engaged in and emotionally invested in. So that was big. But the big part of this game is the gameplay and the way in which you interact with the world around you. So there are, I think, 5 or 6 planets that you travel through throughout the course of Jedi Survivor. And typically what this is like, you get on the ship, you fly there with a fantastic loading time. Like, it's really incredible sometimes how quick this game loads in between those moments. And most plot points have something to do with advancing the core story of, there's this planet Tanalorr, how do we get there? Why can't the Empire get there? They're trying to find a way to do that, and we have to stop them, so on and so forth. But there is a hub world, which is Kobo. And Kobo is where a lot of the things are going to happen. This is where Grease's saloon is, and you'll meet characters along your journey who will go here and stay here. And you can do all sorts of things in the saloon itself. I mean, there's this really great holo tactics game where you can choose any character, any enemy from the game, and you'll collect them along the way as you scan them. And you can employ them in the fight against AI opponent who does the same thing. And it's kind of a little interesting strategy game. There's like a fishing aquarium that you could collect and put fish in. You'll meet all sorts of vendors that you can trade different collectible items with to unlock customizations and different paint colors for your BD1 or your lightsaber, and so on and so forth. And beyond this is a huge planet with, 6 or 7 arching pathways, all which will interact with the story to some degree. And you kind of get this Metrovania-esque exploration style where you can go run around most parts of the planet, and you're going to find things like, laser walls. Okay, well, we can't go through the laser gate yet. We'll have to get an item that'll allow us to traverse the laser gate. Or grappling hook. Freaking I love the grappling hook. It's quite the trope nowadays in most video games. We'll be able to grapple that later on in the game, so we'll come back to it. And I think what this kind of did for me is create a unstructured gameplay experience, because the first time I went to Kobo, I touched down and I think, okay, I'm going to explore everything I can, because why not? I mean, I'm here on this new planet. Before I move on, I should collect all the items, do all the collectibles. But Kobo is a place that you'll visit over and over and over and over again throughout the course of the game. And so what I discovered was, there's tons of little items and things I'm going to need to traverse this planet effectively. And so what I ultimately did is invested in beelining the story so I could get all the things before I go out and explore. And what made this unstructured is that one would hope, in Metroidvania style, where you do get this item, and you go, fantastic, I have this item. Now I'll go back and explore these places I couldn't before. What really happened with me is that the world design for Kobo specifically is so big, and so there's such a wide volume of it that to invest in the time to retraverse all these areas on each visit when you get these new items and so on, was just a lot. It was a lot. So I said, okay, well, I'll beat the story and then I'll go back and re-explore everything. And what this did was it created a first half of the game where there's this big story unfolding, and you're part of that adventure and along for the ride. And then the latter half, when you're trying to play cleanup and get all the customizations and things, it's just you running around listening to a podcast while you just pick up items off the ground or open a chest and so on and so forth. And I would have liked if the design was built a little more where there was less of that and more intermingling of these two gameplay experiences. And I think Fallen Order did that pretty well, because there are a few items in Fallen Order where you kind of do the same thing. But the thing about Fallen Order was, since there was no grand hub world, each planet being a little smaller in size to explore from front to back, I felt that to be a little more engaging in terms of, by the time I beat the game, there wasn't so much cleanup to go back and do from a completionist's lens. And this is really only something that'll affect you if you're out there to complete and collect practically everything you can in Jedi Survivor, which is what my experience was. But otherwise, another big piece of it is the gameplay, the combat, the fighting. And Cal is such a cool character, and there's a lot of ways that you can engage with it. There are 5 stances in the game, everything from a single saber to dual wielding to a double blade to a saber with a gun. I thought that was super cool. And you also get the I don't know what it's called, the Crusader stance that Kylo Ren uses in the new trilogy. And every one of these fighting styles is unique in the moves you can do, in the way you can use it in combat. And also it does change the way in which you have to interact with enemies. I think a great one being, you have this little there's a shield minigun stormtrooper who will shoot, but he has this shield in front of him, so you can't just deflect lasers right back at him with ease and hurt him. But if you have the double-bladed saber, for example, you get this crazy blocking technique which will send enough lasers back to just completely collapse the shield and kill him. Whereas if you can only have 2 stances at once, so if you don't have this one in your repertoire, then okay, maybe you have to employ a new technique, and you can go over there with the Crusader saber and just bash on him until he's done, or you can pick him up with force if you've really invested in force points and kill a stormtrooper and so on. So anyways, throughout this process of fighting, you will gain skill points, and then you'll level up and you get new skills and so on and so forth. I really enjoyed the combat. I thought there was a good variety in the fighting, and that was across the game. You would encounter new enemies, and they can be, you get the Bedlam Raiders, who have taken on some of the droids from the prequel trilogy as part of their team, so you get to fight some droids and stuff like that. And then there's also the Empire, of course, and then there's just fauna and creatures from the environment, and you'll fight them all in an equal amount throughout. And I really had a lot of fun engaging with these enemies. When you start and you're not very skilled, you'll fight some of them and be like, geez, this is impossible, what the heck? But then as you grow as a Jedi and you have new skills, you begin to just wreak havoc on some of these people sometime. And that's a lot of fun. One of the things I did encounter quite a bit when playing the game was glitches, like tons of glitches. The game would, I would see Cal and other people T-posing. There were times when people were headless. I was running around and their heads were falling off of their body and nowhere to be found. And I fell through the geometry a few times into the middle of the earth, which was kind of cool on Coruscant, because I'm just running along all these skyscrapers on an invisible floor. But it was so obtrusive throughout my gaming experience that I was really taken aback, and I thought the game certainly seemed like it needed a little extra time in the oven just to kind of clean up and polish, because these glitches, while they weren't game breaking and I didn't experience problems because of them, overall were just so pervasive and funny that I had to mention it here in this review. One of the things, though, that I think the game captures really well in its gameplay is the feeling of being a Jedi. The amount of customization options available for your lightsaber, for your gun, for Cal, from the way he dresses to how he wears his facial hair and his hair itself. He can look like so many different types of Jedi. It's really impressive, and so I really had the enjoyment of, I guess, experiencing what it'd be like to be a Jedi. I think this game really captures it, and it's not as flexible as, say, something like Knights of the Old Republic, but I think that they do a pretty good job of doing so. One of the things I really would have liked to see is more just focus on the Force. Cal is really restricted in the Force to only a few skills. I mean, he can force pull, push, and variations of that, more powerful variations of that. He can confuse enemies and use mind tricks, and that's a lot of it. I mean, he can slow down time as well with his Force, but that's what Cal knows at this point in the game, and especially if they were doing a little bit of this embracing the dark side, I'd have loved to see Cal just go off the deep end and start doing some crazy. They should give you access to some of these things. Like, all right, what if I want to like freaking force lightning, or force choke, like some of these dark powers? Give us access to that. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But anyways, as far as a core gameplay experience goes, traversing these worlds, exploring them, fighting and engaging in the combat, a lot of fun. Can be challenging, can be tedious, but enjoyable nonetheless. Not much to rant about on the sound in this game. You get your standard Star Wars fare of laser blasts and orchestral music, and nothing stood out to me in particular. Didn't have any troubles here in the sound department as far as audio glitches and problems. And I thought the voice acting was well done. I mean, it was a high tier quality. So sound is good. And graphically, I think the game is beautiful as well. There are moments such as on Coruscant, which I was mentioning, where it's just incredible to see the scale as Cal is standing there in this deep, dark, seedy part of Coruscant, and there's these skyscrapers that reach up to the top of a giant dome, which is like, you just really feel the sense of scale. And planets like Kobo can have beautiful places. There's a weather station you go to later on up in the clouds, which just looks incredible. There are some issues though. There's a lot of checkerboarding, and you can very visibly see it when you're playing in even the highest fidelity quality of the game. There's also some interesting physics. Like if you have shaggy long hair on Cal and you jump, his hair will like stick out like legs or something, the spider legs, or I don't know, and it'll kind of freeze there. And the physics just never looked particularly right for some of these like loose items that they have kind of in the game overall. But graphically, aside from a couple little weird things like that, did enjoy it, I'll have to say. Okay, that's a lot about Jedi Survivor. Okay, did I like it? I really enjoyed the game. I wish that the writing was a little stronger and the story was more engaging, and I felt that the exploration aspects of the game were a little tedious at times as well. But if these things were cleaned up, I think there would be a very strong title here, because from a gameplay lens, I had a lot of fun playing it to the extent that I said, okay, I need to go back, I need to complete everything, get the platinum for this one. And the game held up beautifully, graphically, it sounds fantastic, and overall is quite fun to play. And so those are kind of a number of my big thoughts on Jedi Survivor. Did you play the game? And I hope you liked the video. If you did, please like the video. Would love to see you as well. Stick around for the next one. So please subscribe. And otherwise, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Jedi Survivor and what you thought about it. Okay, hope you all have a great rest of your day, and thanks for tuning in. Take care.